Good morning. Hemshech Chaim Beis, the conclusion of Hemshech Chaim Beis, through the lens and perspective of the sources, beginning with the Torah Ohr of the Alter Rebbe in Chanukah, Maimer Chanukah, but it's Miketz, 38c is where we're up to. Yesterday was also the Rebbe Rashab's birthday. Chof Cheshvan, Tafresh Chof Aleph. That would make it his 163rd birthday, right? 163. Chof Aleph, Tafshin Chof Aleph, Pei Aleph. Yeah. $8. 163rd birthday of the Rebbe Rashab. And so, obviously, worthwhile to mention, Rebbe Rashab was born, as the Tzemach Tzedek said, Chof Cheshvan is the Rosh Hashanah Keser, and it was in the year Kisra. Tafresh Chof Aleph is also the letters of Kisra in Aramaic is Keser. Chof Tafresh Chof Aleph is Chof Tafresh Aleph. Okay. So it's not surprising, therefore, that Ayin Beis begins with Keser, and as a central theme, the idea of the three Ksarim, the three crowns, the level of Makif, the level of Sovev Kalalman, and the interface between Keser serving as interface between the higher divine levels and existence. Okay. So to bring it back to where we are now, so we learned about Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, why a neshama is compared to a Ner, the Ner of the flame, the fire, the candle of God. And then we're learning now about why is a mitzvah compared to a Ner. That's the second pasuk. Ner Mitzvah v'Torah Ohr. So regarding a mitzvah, which is obviously a question also remained unanswered in Ayin Beis, the connection of Ner to mitzvah. The Ner to neshama, the Ayin Beis does discuss based on this Maimorim here, and that is the three things: the psila, the wick, is the divine soul as it manifests in the physical reality in existence. The shemen is the conversion and transformation of the intellect of the animal soul, which on its own is engaged with material matters, should become fuel, oil, to feed and lead to v'haftas Hashem Elokecha, love of God, passionate love, through these bundles of Shema and Baruch Shem. And that creates the fire, divine light of the Ohr, the third element, that a candle producing the light. In Ner Mitzvah, he hasn't yet broken down the three elements. What he has said so far, and I'm summing up the second paragraph on page 38c, it's 38c, that a mitzvah is asgula pratis, specific feature, specific power, specific quality, personality, as a resource to elevate the animal soul and to bind it, asheket ishana b'mitzvesav, which is the blessing we make on mitzvahs, to bind it with Kodesh Elyon. We sanctify it. And that's the binding, which is higher than Ishtalshlus. That's what Kedusha is. Ishtalshlus is the creation. And a mitzvah elevates the creation to a place that's higher than the structure. And he explained why is that? Because a mitzvah is levushim. A mitzvah is not something necessary. It's not a pnimi, as in like Torah, which we learn Torah and we internalize it. A mitzvah is a levush. You do a mitzvah, it's an action that you're doing. There are mitzvahs, as we're going to learn shortly, like tefillin and talis, that are mamish a levush. You actually put them on. But every mitzvah in the category of levushim, called levush malchus, royal garments, a royal garment, and a levush is a makif. Shemakifim ma'bishim es hanefesh mereshi ve'adraglo They surround the person like a garment that encompasses the person from head to foot, and binds them tzrura b'tzreir achaim es Hashem mamish. So the garment achieves something. It takes the body and all elevates it and binds it. Since you're doing a mitzvah of Hashem, so if you wear a regular garment, it's a regular garment. But the mitzvahs of Hashem are Hashem's garments. So those garments, when we wear them, we're in a sense binding ourselves and connecting ourselves. Like he explains in Tanya, what the mitzvahs are, the Taryag mitzvahs, as they manifest in Machshava Dibra Maisa, which is the garments, they become the garments of the soul. The soul itself, the neshama itself, as he explains in Tanya, are the faculties of the soul. But the faculties are just are exactly that. They're resources. It's the thought, speech, and action that activates them, where we are expressing our faculties. You can have a mind and emotions and not express it in Torah mitzvahs. When you express it in Torah mitzvahs, these are garments that surround us, encompass us, and elevate the nefesh, the tzreir Hashem. Like k'moy shehu, k'moy ha'adam kishu lovush, yichel lahamshik ese al yidei levushay. When a person has a garment, you can draw him, you can, so to speak, pull him and draw him through his garment. The garment's like a handle. And then he gave the second example of the slingshot. Chen kitzreir even b'margema, the tzreir even, which is you put a pebble, a stone, in a slingshot. By binding it. We said cheret is the pouch, the pocket, the crevice, however you exactly translate it. It is that by doing that, you're able to extend, to be able to shoot, so to speak, the stone much farther l'mayla yesa than you could do on your own. Haklal, and what's the klal therefore? What is the principle here? Shekol b'chinas makif hu Allah l'mayla. That every level of makif is essentially elevating something upward. So since mitzvahs are makifim, levushim, that's what they do. They have the koyach, the zgula, as he puts it, to elevate the nefesh, of course, also the nefesh habamis, which we'll get back to. But that's how he's explaining a mitzvah. So if you think about it, anashama ner Hashem nishmas adam, the izbananus, the contemplation of the divine soul, affects the animal soul, like we learned. But clearly, a mitzvah has an additional component, because when you do a mitzvah, you actually, the levush adds a additional, you can say, forward thrust to elevate anything that mitzvah is engaged with, or dressing up, anything that it's encompassing. But he hasn't finished, so he's going to continue now. We'll continue learning inside. And these pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. Just follow, you'll see there are different sections. There's Ayin Beis, and there's Torah Ohr, and there's also the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, which we will learn later. So, we're on the line, Shekol b'chinas makiv hu Allah l'mayla. And now the Rebbe, Alter Rebbe, is going to continue in explaining this in his usually creative and original way, by now explaining in a particular mitzvah, the mitzvah of tefillin and talis and tefillin, I should say, talis and tefillin. So the prayer shawl we put on, and the tefillin that we don. Well, l'chein, he says, and therefore, for this reason, meaning the reason that levushim makif elevates someone to a higher place, like a slingshot, which is a levush, because remember the cheret is the pouch. You can call that a garment because it's made out of it's like a garment. It's not just the other parts of it. So he says like this: "Ulechein leivshin talis utfilm koydem atfila." And this is the reason, before we start davening, we dress, we leivshin, we adorn ourselves, we get dressed in talis and tefillin. Obviously, he's talking here in the weekday. Shabbos, it's only a talis, but and Yom Tov, but talis and tefillin. Koydem atfila, before we start davening, which we take for granted is just what you do. You put on talis and tefillin. But what's the reason? How does talis and tefillin? So you could always, the mitzvah of talis and tefillin, hypothetically, you can put it on another time, not when you're davening. You can say Shema in it, but who says Like it's like in a way, it's like a preparation, introduction into davening that we put on Talis and film. So he says, lahamshich. Why do we do it? Lahamshich, to draw down, or I don't say draw down. It doesn't say lahamshich lamata. Let's just say lahamshich, to draw b'chinas makif, the level of makif. Since both Talis and film are like a levush, all mitzvahs are levushim in concept. But here you have them literally, they're physically also like a levush. You dress them, you dress up in a Talis and film. So he says, in order to be mamshir the makif, l'maylo, lahalis es nefesh habamis b'tfilah. Since prayer, a part of the purpose of prayer is like karbonis. Remember, tefillah replaces karbonis. A carbon is you're bringing an animal as an offering to God. So tefillah is part of it is also refining and so-called offering the animal soul. So that's why you begin by dressing with talis and film. Not sure what he means by lamayla. I mean, before he said that makif wa law lamayla. So I guess that's what he means. To be draw the makif upward, lamayla, or maybe he means not to draw it upward, maybe it be mamshir, the makif from above. The makif that's above, if you wouldn't put on the garment, so the makif remains removed from us. By putting on the makif, by talis and film, we're mamshir that makif lamayla, to do what? What's the purpose of it? Lahales es nefesh habamis, like he said at the beginning, that a mitzvah, levush, elevates anything that you put into that levush. Like a slingshot. Or like when a person wears a garment, you can draw him closer. You can pull him. So that's the purpose of the. What he says. That's why the Talis and film, the house of nefesh habamis b'tila kaneda, as it's known, she'ein hatachten elu l'mayla, that the tachten does not elevate upward, at she'yired es tchila ha'oram l'mayla, until you first draw down a reflection, an oyer below. In other words, what draws something from below upward is when there first comes something that you're mamshich, she'yired es tchila ha'oram l'mayla. So he's adding another point here. So by putting on talis and tefillin, what you're doing is you're being mamshich the makif downward in order to elevate the nefesh habamis upward. That's what he's saying here. So it is an additional point that he did there. So then when I said before, lahamshich b'chinas makif l'mayla, yeah, correct. You're drawing the makif from above downward in order to help elevate upward. That's what he says. Vatfilahi aliyas nefesh habamis. And davening, the prayer, is the actual process of elevating the animal soul. So that's why before you begin the aliyah, the aliyah of the animal soul, you start with the levush. Like he said, before you start davening, you first put on the talis and film. In other words, you don't put it in the middle of davening or the beginning, before. So the tefillah, its role is elevating the animal soul, which of course includes v'haftas Hashem elkecha in davening, b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha. Doesn't say that explicitly here, but it's obvious. And so therefore, to help do that elevation, you'll be mamshich the makif through talis and film. I think in the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, he's going to explain this more in detail. It deserves more explanation, exactly what is the dynamics here. But let's suffice with what the Alter Rebbe says. As I said, everything the Alter Rebbe is usually more concentrated and more dense. But in the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, I think if I recall correctly, he elaborates more about this. So if you want more explanation, I would wait till we get there instead of me trying to explain it right now. But I will stop in case anybody wants to ask anything, because he's going to continue now more about details about davening, and actually contrast tefillah to Torah, which is yet another reason why I wanted to learn this inside, is because in Ayin Beis, as we've been discussing, remember the 550 pages of Mamata L'mayla through tefillah, then comes Torah Mamayla L'mata. And of course, we have to understand where mitzvahs fit in here. Is a mamayla lamata or mamat lamayla, which we will discuss quite at length, actually. In the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, more bekitzer, it's more more briefly. In the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, it takes on a whole theme, the mamat lamayla, mamayla lamata, which in turn will help us understand Ayin Beis better. So that's another piece here in this whole puzzle. But right now, what he said was why we put on Talis and Tefillin. So a few points. First, mitzvahs are levushim, so they have a particular zgula to elevate animal soul. The reason for that is because a mitzvah is a levush, and we've established that a levush, a makif, elevates things. That's the klal. So kol b'chinas makif hu Allah l'mayla. So therefore, before davening, before the elevation rather of the animal soul, we begin by drawing and connecting to the makif, to the levush of talis and tefillin. He doesn't get into the difference in talis and tefillin here. Here is using them both together, even though talis and tefillin themselves are obviously also two levels. Talis is a complete makif. Tefillin has an element of makif, but tefillin is also al yad, and there's the shalosh. But he doesn't go into that here. That's other Maimorim talk about that. He was talking in general the Talis and Tefillin. Are there any questions? If not, I'll continue reading.
Yeah, the cloud that the Rebbe says here that you first have to bring down before you can elevate from tachton. So obvious question, say for example, a woman who doesn't put on talis or tefillin. So is that why we give tzedakah, or is that why we learn Torah generally before? We have to do something before our davening to elevate the nefesh of Bahamas Lamaila?
You're talking about for a woman.
Let's start with for a woman. She doesn't have that prefatory.
So the general answer for a woman about talis and tefillin is like the same idea of a woman like a bris milah. Isha commanda milah damit. That means she has already the hamshachas hamakif without the talis and tefillin. That's generally the rule. As the Rebbe says many times, that in the day when we don't say tachnun, it means we have all the hamshachas of tachnun without saying it. Or like on Shabbos, we don't put on tefillin on Shabbos. So Shabbos itself is mamshich, whatever tefillin is mamshich. Like Tkiyah Shefer on Shabbos, we don't blow Shefer because Shabbos is mamshich. So the general picture is that talis and tefillin, a woman has maybe innate within her and does not need actual donning and actual dressing in those garments. That's a general response. Tzedakah is another story. Tzedakah, even all of us to give tzedakah before davening. Yoav pruta la'ani v'hodeh matzli. Giving tzedakah before davening, during davening, by Yivarach David and different places. So tzedakah is yet another zgul. He doesn't mention that here. I don't think that Mittler Rebbe does either. But that's a general answer regarding women. In addition, some places it also says when the man puts on talis and tefillin, he's also yates of the woman. Just like she's yates of the man and things, the mitzvah she does, like lighting candles or things like that. There's another discussion about the mitzvah of tefillin in general for a woman. Is it a mitzvah or is it a shus? Does she have a mitzvah to daven? A man definitely has a mitzvah to daven. A woman, does she have the mitzvahs? It's man grama, a mitzvah shazan grama. So she could daven. It's not like she can't. But that's another probably discussion regarding this topic as well. Okay, so let's let's move on. Now we continue. So lechein hatfilah hi nuscha achas b'chol yom. Now he's going to explain another seemingly a questionable issue, which is if tefillah is about elevating our animal soul, it would seem that every day there's a different type of avodah, and yet we find that we say the same tefillah every day, all our entire lives. Tefillah nuscha achas b'chol yom kol yemei chayav shel adam haktsuvim lei, that all the days of his life that were designated for him, that are allocated to him, Yemesh Naseinu B'hem Shivim Shana, It's a lashon from Tehillim, that your days will be 70 years. Because that's a pasuk. It says, Im begvura shmeinim shana. And I understand people live longer today. Thank God. But there's an expression in Tehillim that 70 years was the average age, was considered to be a full age in, maybe you could say in the earlier years. I mean, 120 is the max. But Alter Rebbe is just bringing that just to demonstrate the idea that the years that a person is dedicating. So davening, we say the same tefillah every day. There's no changes. I'm not talking about the variations of Shir Shal Yom, or when you say Tachna, you don't say Tachna. But generally, tefillah is the same prayer every day. Same words, same nusach. And what was the purpose of this prayer? Kefina tzutzes nefesh habamis. He's explaining now. Since the tefillah is about Allah of the nefesh habamis, so the tefillah is commensurate to, according to the sparks, netzutzes, of the nefesh habamis, of the animal soul. So tefillah is meant to elevate the sparks that are embedded, or even you can say trapped, in the animal soul. Shetzrichen lahales, they need to be elevated. So nefesh habamis, like everything in existence, has divine sparks in it. Throughout our lives, that we're given the amount of years that God gives us, our job is to elevate those sparks. So according to those sparks are according to those sparks are our tefillahs, meaning God gives us enough days of our lives, enough years, to elevate those sparks. So it's one activity, elevating all the sparks of the animal soul. So therefore, the tefillah is like every day we're elevating a different part of the sparks, but you're using the same language and the same nusach. That's what apparently he's saying. You need to analyze this a bit more. And again, Mittler Rebbe's Maimer will help us as well. But that's what he's explaining now. Why it's one nusach. And he's going to distinguish it from Torah. Torah, we don't learn the same Torah every day. Torah, the whole point of Torah is to learn new Torah. You could learn the same idea every day, but it's not a necessity. Torah is actually, it's supposed to be lafosha, but to be mechadish and constantly learn new ideas. So why in tefillah are we saying the same thing? So what he's saying apparently, I'm saying it apparently because I don't want to say anything definitively until I really fully see the whole picture, that nefesh habamis is one nefesh habamis. It has, let's say, 70 years worth of sparks to elevate, meaning 70 times whatever every year. Every year has 365 days. If you're talking from the Shemesh, if it's a 354 days, if it's a Shnas Levona. So all these days are all meant to elevate the divine, the animal soul. So the tefillah is like, essentially, it's like davening is one extended prayer that we say again and again to elevate these sparks. That's how he's explaining why it's one nusach. Now, I know it's not complete because you could say, one second, if every day we're elevating different sparks, then the prayer should also be different. Why is he saying it's all one? So let's continue reading. Let's see how he explains it. By contrast, the nefesh habamis has a certain amount of limited sparks. And that's what we need to elevate through our lifetimes. And that's the amount of time God gives us, allocates us to elevate those sparks. Mashenk nefesh halikis is nitzchi. It's a divine soul. A divine soul is unlimited. Which essentially, seemingly means that even if after a person passes away, God forbid, the divine soul continues its journey. The animal soul has been either elevated or not elevated completely, and then the neshama will have to come down again in a gilgul, a reincarnation, to continue the job if it wasn't finished. But a divine soul is not driven by its purpose, like we learned. It's not, the neshama doesn't come down lamata for the nefesh halikis. Neshama atzma einu tzricha tikun, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, many places, and in other places, many places. Because the neshama is a divine. The neshama comes down for the guf and nefesh habamis to elevate them, and they are limited and defined. So it's the nefesh elokis is nitzchis. V'kol yom nasa b'chinas chadasha. And every day of a person's life, nasa b'chinas chadasha becomes like a new level. He's not finished. If it's like a new level, then why is the prayer the same? So he continues. And every day, with a new so-called opportunity or new nitzvahs that it has to elevate, she has to elevate also the new nitzvahs every day. In other words, it's not enough yesterday's spark that he elevated during davening, also today. And it's all considered one elevation. In other words, the Nefesh Habamis is one entity, has many parts to it, and every day of our lives, we have to elevate one part of the Nefesh Habamis. So it's true, every day has its own Aveda, but it's all part of one Aliyah. So in a way, like I'm saying, the davening of today is a continuation of yesterday's davening, with the new focus on the new nitzitz of the new day in the Nefesh Habamis. But altogether, it's one journey, so to speak, one journey of elevating the animal soul. Again, I'm explaining it as I see based on what he's saying here. But as I said, again, I personally am not so satisfied with this. I think we need more explanation. And as I said as well, the Mittler Rebbe does explain it. I don't remember now what he says, or else I would just repeat it. But we'll definitely learn it. I'll check it out as well. So that's what he says about. So what did he add here that's relevant to our conversation, our discussion? So it's not tangential. He's saying tefillah is the aliyah of the nefesh habamis. That's why to be ma'ilid, you need to be mamshech the makif through talis and tefillin. But because it's the aliyah of the nefesh habamis, so he's explaining that's why it's one nusach. It's not many different. You don't say every day a different tefillah. You say the same tefillahs because it's one process of one nefesh habamis. Each day is a new day. That's why it's a new prayer. You can't rely on yesterday's prayer for today because you have to elevate the new sparks of the animal soul. But together, it all adds up to one narrative, if you wish, one avodah. And that's why it's the same nusach. Mashenkin. Here's the contrast. Limud HaTorah. Just like before he said nefesh halakis is nitzchis, and it doesn't have this defined amount of years. It says Mashenkin limud HaTorah, in contrast to tefillah, tzorich dafka limud b'chol yom davar chadash. Every day you have to learn something new. That's the mitzvah. Does he say la fashaba here? It definitely says it in the Mittler Rebbe's name.
No, it doesn't say it here.
Okay, the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer he does say. So Limud HaTorah is a different type of Aved. Limud HaTorah is supposed to learn something new every day. Of course, you can learn what you learned yesterday and go more in depth, but there's a mitzvah to learn something every day new. Davar Chodesh. In Tefillah, there's no mitzvah to add a new Tefillah every day. We're not talking about kavana. Kavana you could add. Obviously, you don't just want to say it by rote and mechanically. You're always adding new intention, and new passion, and so on. But the actual Shema Yisrael or Baruch Shem or Moida Ani, or everything we say in the Siddur, you don't need a second Siddur. Same Siddur applies. The same Nusach HaTefillah every day. Now, why Torah is different than Tefillah? As I said, let's read on. We'll see what he says. But again, the Mittler Rebbe will talk about it because they have different type of birur. This is the birur mamatel l'mayla of the nefesh habamis, and he says it's all. I'll read again. Kol hi Allah achas. It's one halah. You're elevating the animal soul. So, like in karbanis, when you bring offerings, so there the offerings are brought every day. Another offering. But in our case, when you're talking about you have one animal soul, you don't have two animal souls. And elevating that animal soul is a whole Aveda. It's a lifetime of work. Like he said. That's why we're allocated a certain amount of years according to the sparks in the Nefesh Habamis. So every day presents new aspects of the animal soul you want to elevate. For example, the chesed of the animal soul, the gvura of the animal soul. But overall, it's one halah. And thus, it's like one prayer, which seems like a big chiddush. It's almost like saying that the prayer continues. It's all one prayer. It's all saying the same prayer because you're all dealing with one halah. You can't say it's one prayer because today's prayer is not yesterday's. As I said before, you can't pray one day for 2 days. You can't pray twice in one day for 2 days of prayer. Every day has its the tefillah is for each day. You can't say I missed Shacharis yesterday. Okay, Shabbos. Yeah, miss Shacharis one day, a Sunday. I'll daven Shacharis twice on Monday. It doesn't work that way. So it is each day a new prayer, but it's not a new, as in it's a new prayer, but it's the same prayer because of this halah achas. Mashenkin Torah, every day is something new. Yeah. Let me stop here if anybody wants to say anything. If anybody, by the way, wants to add an explanation beyond what I said, I'm happy to listen as well. As I said, I would wait till the Mittler Rebbe because he probably adds to it. But this is what he says, and we can't look to Ayin Beis because this is part of Ayin Beis that the Rebbe Rashab never got back to. So who knows what the Rebbe Rashab would have written about this. But that's what, so far we know what the Alter Rebbe says.
Is the reason he talks about, my question is, why does he talk about tefillah so much? But he's doing it to contrast what Torah does as compared with what tefillah does?
That's not the main thing. I said that we'll be able to derive from this some more information to understand Ayin Beis. That's not the reason he's coming. He's not talking about Torah here yet. The main reason he's saying is because he wants to explain how a mitzvah elevates the animal soul. Remember, the whole purpose of Ner Mitzvah, like Ner Hashem Nishmasadim, is about transforming the animal soul. So he said, Levushim of mitzvahs have a special zgula. First line of the paragraph, Lahalis as Nefesh Habamis. So now he's bringing the aliyah of the Nefesh Habamis. That's tefillah. That's why before it you need to be mamshech the makif l'mayla, which is Talis Tefilin. So once he said that tefillah is halas Nefesh Habamis, he's explaining that's why we say the same prayer every day, because the one halah of the animal soul in all its details. That's the obvious reason why he brings this.
What's the specific mitzvah that commands us to pray?
There's all kinds of opinions on that. Some say it's part of Avadas Hashem Elokechem. Mitzvah of Avadas Hashem is prayer. Some say tefillah became karbonos tiknum. Every day was a mitzvah to bring a carbon Beis Hamikdash. So we have a carbon tamid in the morning, carbon tamid in the afternoon, mincha, and Ma'ariv is from a Sadesh. I mean, there's entire books written about this.
And Liachad Shmo, that's obvious too, right?
Well, he's not here. He didn't actually mention tefillah as a mitzvah. He mentioned mitzvah here. What he said here is actually Talis Tefilin is what he brought here.
But that's my question. Why is he talking about tefillah so much here? As a contrast, as something to compare against, or as an example of?
I just said. He said that the levushim are necessary to elevate the animal soul. So he's explaining that's why we put on Talis and Tefillin. This is coming to explain we put on Talis and Tefillin before davening, when mamshich the makif, in order to elevate the animal soul.
Okay,
that's why he's bringing it.
Thank you.
About tefillah, that we daven the same tefillah every day is lechoyer is answering a question. If you say tefillah is Allah Nefesh Habamis, I said Asher look all this. I did it yesterday and 2 days ago. Why do I have to do it again? I already did it yesterday. He says, no, today there's no nitzah you didn't do yesterday.
But the question is, why is it one nusach? The same as that for sure what you just said is correct. That's why yesterday davening not enough, because you still have parts of Nefesh Habamis to elevate. But it's the same nusach because yesterday's haliyah and today's haliyah is all part of one general halah of the Nefesh Habamis. That's what he's saying. Both points are correct.
The point he says one nusach is lechoire, if tefillah is the idea that we know is to bakoshat tzorochov, so every day I need different bakoshat tzorochov. Why am I copying the same davening of yesterday? Today I have different needs.
So the answer is because halah achas. Good. That's a good point.
What about the idea? What about the idea that
no? So one second. Let me just finish 1 second. So Naftali. So therefore, that's why he says it's halah, that even though it's a nitzus chodosh, like you said, every day new, but it's all part of one halah achas. That's why it's the same nusach. Whereas learning Torah, every day you learn something new.
He's trying to strengthen the point that tefillah is an inyan from aliyas and nefesh habamis, which in other places we say tefillah is bakoshat tzorochov, to bring down hamshoche, and here he's saying something which is saying different than all.
And there's 2 points. One is that every day you have to daven. You can't just rely yesterday. A new tefillah. But the nusach is the same because it's all one story of elevating the animal soul, l'chlolos. Good, that's correct. I agree with what you're saying.
Is it because we're new every day that we're doing it? In other words, we wake up new every day. So even though we're saying the same tefillah, we are different, perhaps, maybe.
Are you adding something or you're saying something different? I'm not sure.
I'm trying to add something to the conversation. I don't know.
Either way works. Okay. He says nasa b'chinas chadasha. You could say the person is new, like refreshed and renewed, or you could say that animal soul has not been finished refining. You only refined one part of it, so there's still more work to be done. So there's new work to be done. Both ways work. It's not a contradiction. Here it seems to lean more that there's more work to be done. Because he says, but you can say a new spark is also reflective of a new person, a refreshed.
Right. You're coming to it from a different place. The fact is like this.
1 second. Let me just say this. A human being comes down to this world, they have one mission statement. In general, to refine and elevate their selfish and self-interest driven animal soul. But there's so many details in that. There's the animal soul as it manifests in when we eat and drink. There's the animal soul that manifests in our pleasures, animal soul in our work, in our ego, in chesed, gvura, teferes. So it's overall, it's one mission to elevate the animal soul, which is what tefillah tackles. But then there's each day, there's new challenges and new opportunities in doing that. And that's why each day you have to daven anew. So you can say it includes both the person, but also that which you attain. Every day, for example, even though you may commute on the same subway, but you meet new people, new challenges, new situations come up. So it's still all part of the general mission of transforming yourself. But every day has its own unique way of doing that.
Right. In other words,
the question really still needs to be explained. So why is it by Torah you have to actually learn something new? It's not the same. You don't learn the same thing every day.
I understand.
So the most obvious answer is because Torah is mamaya lamata. So you're drawing down something new every day. Tefillah is all still engaging. It's basically you haven't tamed your animal soul until the end of your life. That's why he says a person is designated a certain amount of time to tame and harness their animal soul. So therefore, you're continuing. It's like, think of it like exercise. Every day you exercise. You do the same exercises, but you're also doing a new exercise because every exercise you do affects you in a deeper way. So even though you're generally doing the same exercise, you're exercising your body, but it could be a different muscle, or it could be a different part of the body, or it could be even the same, but so therefore the exercise is the same. You're exercising your body. In this case, you're exercising your animal soul. And that's a lifetime of work. And every day you have to do it every day, but you're doing more or less, you're going through the same rituals, like the same tefillah. Torah is a different experience, which we'll learn about. I don't want to now speculate why Torah is not that way. Because he said that in the parentheses as just a contrast. It's going to be relevant to the bigger picture of Ayin Beis, but right now The main thing is the focus that a mitzvah is a levush, talis and tefillin is the levush that helps mamshich the makif, that helps elevate the animal soul, and all of that is one general aveda, the same nusach, each day in a new way, in a new aspect, a new angle, a new perspective or something. I would almost compare it to breath. You know, we have to breathe every second. Breathing every second is a new breath, but you're doing the same process. You're exhaling and inhaling. Yes, it's fresh air, new air, and you release the carbon dioxide. But the bottom line is you're doing the same motions. You know, exhaling and inhaling, exhaling, but you have to constantly do it because that's what's necessary for life. But it's the same procedure. It's not like you're doing something different every second. What's different is that it's fresh air, new oxygen, which is processed, and so on.
It's the idea we say every day, Shamnu, Bogadnu, Gozalnu. Okay, Gozalnu yesterday, 2 days ago. I did tshuva already. Why again? Gozalnu, Gozalnu, Gozalnu again. I didn't steal every day. Once a week I steal. Why today? Why? Because whatever we did till now, today we're going to a higher level of Shamnu Bogadnu. We have other choices. Tshuva is not just to repent. Tshuva is to come closer and closer and closer and closer, going higher and higher. And that's why we say the same Shamnu Bogadnu for the last who knows how many years. The same thing again and again. It's the idea of Allah again and again and again.
Yeah. As I said, he's going to go back to Torah. I see in the next paragraph, Torah Ohr. So that will probably understand the contrast of Torah and Tefillah, which, as I said, develops this idea even further. But right now, most important focus is our law of the Nefesh Habamis. Okay. I'm eager to see what the Mittler Rebbe writes on this. Okay. Okay, next section. Well, Lechein. Now it continues. Back to mitzvahs. Lechein kol ha-mitzvahs nikraz b'shem tzedakah. There's a klal, it says in Yerushalmi, that when it says mitzvah stam, it means tzedakah, because mitzvahs, they're all called in the name tzedakah. So even though tzedakah charity is one of the 613 mitzvahs, but mitzvahs in general are all categorized as a tzedakah. Why? Key. Tzedakah teremim goy. Because tzedakah, the pasuk says, teremim, elevates. Goy, we'll call it the goy means nation, obviously, but it means the mundane. The difference when you say lahavdil ben Yisrael la'amim or ata v'chatonim v'kol v'remaimtonim v'kol al shenas. So essentially, it says that God chose among all the nations of the world a goy from among all the goy haaretz, all the nations of the world. Mamlechas kayanim v'goy kodesh. So it's a process of elevation. So zakat teremim goy. So goy is referring to the material world, and that's what tzedakah does, and that's why all the mitzvahs are called tzedakah, because that's the role of mitzvah. Shayidei tzedakah. Why does tzedakah do this? Because through tzedakah, what happens? Ayidei tzedakah v'chesed. When a person is generous and kind, tzedakah v'chesed she'osin lamata, I should say. Through the charity, through the chesed, the kindness that a person does, performs below, lahachis ruach shvalim, to energize, to revive, ruach shvalim, the spirit of the downfallen. So it's an expression we use in davening and psukim. And when you go physically even, a person is, let's say, a pauper, doesn't have money to live, and you go and give him charity. So you're resurrecting him. You're giving him life. You're energizing him. For ani chashiv kemes, and the Gemara says that a poor person, is considered like God forbid, a dead person. So when you give him tzedakah, you're bringing him back to life. That's why lahachis ruach shvalim. So that's what tzedakah does. It elevates someone who's in a state of like lifeless state, and revives them and brings them back to life. Cain, the Yesimah Cain. So that's what we do below. So is it, and more, and even more so. Cain v'Yesimah Cain means like this, and even more so. Le'ein kates, infinitely more so. Nimshach ruach chaim u'maylo. That when a person does this below, from a ruach chaim, a spirit of life comes from above. B'chaya hachayim baruch hu, from the life of all life, the source of all life. Blessed be He, meaning God. Lahachyas meisim mamish, to give life to things that are absolutely lifeless. B'bchinas yamin mekareves, the state of yamin mekareves, because when you give chesed is yamin, the right hand. Mekareves, that brings closer. In this case, means energizes and gives life. The yaminai techapkeni mamish, and yaminai, the chesed above that is generated through the chesed below. He's explaining, remember, how tzedakah is all mitzvahs, because all mitzvahs do this. So when you do below tzedakah, chesed, that's mechaya mesim, lamata, so how much more so it does so lamaila, that you're drawing down from the source of life to energize and revive. Even the mamish, the lifeless things, and yamin mekarev is a state of yamin, chesed, that brings closer, and yamin techapkeni, which means, with my right arm, I embrace you, mamish. So why techapkeni? Because techapkeni is a makif, and embrace is a makif. Remember we said mitzvahs are levushim, that draw down the makif. But Ed HaMakif Shemilmaila, with this transcendent energy from above, l'reimim, tzedakah tereimim goy, in order to elevate, or l'reimim, to exalt, or lahalis es hanefesh, the nefesh below, including the nefesh, obviously the nefesh abam is goy, l'mayla be'ein sei baruch hu mamash. So on its own, the animal soul, when it is involved in its own material interests, materialism compared to godliness is dead. When a person does a mitzvah, and all mitzvahs are called tzedakah, so what he's doing is the levushim of the mitzvahs draw down from the chayei chayim, that power that embraces him like a makif. So like you said, we first draw down, and that in turn elevates. The nefesh l'mayla be'enisei baruch hu mamish, the zehu inyan ner mitzvah, and that's the meaning of ner mitzvah, the candle of the mitzvah. That's what a mitzvah does. It becomes like a candle of light that elevates the animal soul in a state of makif, like he said, in a state of embrace, like he just explained. Now he didn't explain the three things in mitzvah: the wick, the oil, the fuel, and the light. He will do so, I believe, later in the beer, and definitely the Mittler Rebbe does, and even the Rebbe Rashab did it on page 1352, briefly at least. And now that's Ner Mitzvah. So to sum up this paragraph, what we learned, he said Ner Mitzvah is referring to mitzvah as being the levush that elevates the animal soul, and that begins by first drawing from the levush of makif, drawing it down, and that in turn elevates the nefesh habamis, like during davening. And now we broaden it in general, tzedakah, and all mitzvahs are called tzedakah because that's what mitzvahs do. The same idea what tzedakah does. So when we give tzedakah, we ultimately are tereimim is also from the word makif, tereimim goy, reimamus. Reimamus is always makif. So that's what tzedakah does, but it's just like tzedakah below, that's machaya, lachis ruach shvalim. So that too draws from the makif l'mayla. to elevate the animal soul to this higher level. So what we know right now, without reading further, is that Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam is the izbanus of the Nefesh Elikis Atzma, the izbanus of Shema and Baruch Shem, that impacts the animal soul to also love God. A mitzvah clearly does something more. It adds something. It adds this hamshach of the makif, and that in turn embraces and elevates the animal soul. But he hasn't yet explained the contrast, what the difference is. What is the neshama without the mitzvah, and what does a mitzvah add to the whole picture? So just be aware that it's quite obviously didn't discuss that, but he will, and we'll get to that. Meanwhile, he just explained Ner Mitzvah as story of its own, and then next is going to talk about Torah Ohr. She already started hinting to about the difference between mitzvahs and Torah, but we're going to learn now specifically in the next paragraph. So let me stop for questions if anybody wants to ask anything. As you see, again, it's quite dense. He moves very quickly from first Levush to Tefillah, and then straight to the Tzedakah. That's the Alter Rebbe style. So a lot going on here, a lot to unpack. As I said, the Mittler Rebbe does unpack a lot of this. Any questions or thoughts? Even though I don't usually like to do this, to like give a preview of what's coming, but just to keep in mind, just if you're a little confused with everything we've learned, that it appears to me, again, I don't want to say definitively until we read it inside, that what the end story is going to be, that tefillah is mamish mamata lamayla, from the bottom up. Torah is mamayla lamata, because God gave us the Torah, the picture of the divine from the top down. And mitzvahs is going to be something that combines both. Because on one hand, Hashem gives us mitzvahs, but a mitzvah takes the physical world and elevates it. And a mitzvah is going to be somewhat of a combination of mamat l'mayla, mamayla lamata. If I recall correctly from learning the Torah Ohr and the Mittler Rebbe, which of course will help us also when we get back to Ayin Beis, understand the different, what each of these Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim, that's the three pillars, Torah, Avodah, Tefillah, and Gemilas Chasadim are mitzvahs, like he says here, Tzedakah. That these are going to be the three key, call it, if you want, resources, tools that we use to interface between the divine and existence. Okay.
What he says here at the end, he says, V'zehu inyan Ner Mitzvah, is he referring to the Talis and the Tefilin aspect, or the Tefillah aspect, or all three combined in this paragraph? He calls it Ner Mitzvah.
Mitzvahs in general, all mitzvahs. Talis and Tefillin were just used to explain the idea how a makif is needed in order to, before you go to the you need to draw from above in order to elevate from below. In other words, to elevate the animal soul. Tzedakah is mitzvah. All mitzvahs are called tzedakah, so they are interchangeable. But when you say Ner Mitzvah v'Torah, you mean all the mitzvahs, not any specific mitzvah.
I thought you were making a distinction between tefillah and mitzvah right now, and you're not in your discussion.
Yeah,
tefillah is milamata, and the mitzvah has a combination of both. There was a distinction between milamata, lamayla.
Yeah, but the Alter Rebbe did not make such a distinction here. I'm saying it more in context of when we learned Ayin Beis, to understand the difference between the three. The Alter Rebbe is not distinguishing between tefillah and mitzvah here at all. He doesn't make any reference even that tefillah is a mitzvah. He just says that this is the reason you put on the makif before the davening. Whether tefillah is a mitzvah, by the way, is also another, I mentioned it before. According to the Rambam, tefillah is only a mitzvah when you have a need. Just to daven to elevate the animal soul is not necessarily a mitzvah. But that's another discussion, which is not for now at all. When you say Torah Vedic Milas Chasadim, basically you're saying Torah, Tefillah, and mitzvahs. So I was just referring to that in the larger context of Ayin Beis, not so much in relation to Torah Ohr. Here he just was coming to explain what a mitzvah is. Ner Mitzvah. The next section is what is Torah Ohr. Are there any other questions? Okay. Okay. I should just stop here, probably best. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop here because it's a new topic about Torah Ohr. Needs its own, mafsik ben pasha la pasha. It'll probably be easier to understand. But I will tell you, when I'm learning this, when I've learned it and I'm learning it now, it's going to be more confusing before we get clarity. What can I tell you? Because there's the Alter Rebbe is packing a lot of things together and very kitzur lashon. And the beer on this piece in Torah, in the next page, he will elaborate more, and we'll really understand it best once we learn the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer. But I assure you this, that when we finish learning it and we go back to Ayin Beis, you'll see the picture is going to be very clear. Really, at the end of the day, extremely crystal clear, more than we even gained till now. That's why I think it's so important learning this, because it all comes together in a very fascinating way. But like everything, we're building the puzzle piece by piece. And when you do that, you don't always see. You ever see, Lahavni build a jigsaw puzzle. There's stages where it's very frustrating because you don't yet see the whole picture emerging. You just see pieces here and there. I don't know why I came up with that example, but that's the way I feel about what we're learning now. So if you're a little confused, welcome to the club. But there's a light. I don't want to say the tunnel. It's not the end of the tunnel here, but the light will come and become very clear the picture as it emerges. Okay. So our learning, of course, is an honor and a merit of all the bravest of us, the front lines in Eretz Yisrael, protecting the beautiful Jews, men, women, and children of Israel, and by extension, all of us, Eden, everywhere. Hashem should protect us all, and may our learning, all the hamshachas, whether it's mamayla lamata, mamat lamayla, joining both together, ultimately bring the Yeshua and Hatzalah and the Geula in the most in a painless and seamless way into the coming of Mashiach.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I have to share with you something, which is I still can't even believe it. And anyway, on Thursday, I think, I did a video, essentially speaking to our Muslim cousins and friends.
I watched it.
Yeah, and it's being watched by quite a few people in the Muslim world. You can see from the number. We can see from the numbers. We can see from the analytics.
That's fantastic. That's what we need. We need to get people like you and sane voices from that community
But listen
together.
to this. But listen to this. So Friday afternoon, early afternoon, I get a phone call, a WhatsApp call. The photo ID, the phone ID says Mohammed. And I answer, and it's a guy. He's family comes from Hebron, calls himself a Palestinian. He lives in South Florida. And we had this like almost an hour talk. And he says he's been following my videos a long time, but especially after the war, broke out. Just for the record, no, he does not. He says to me, "You're being very militant. You're inciting war." He was like criticizing, and but he was very civil. He's studied to be a doctor. He just never got his residency. He works in the pharmaceutical industry, South Florida of all places, and very anti-Israel, of course, and very has a completely different narrative. I say completely, I mean opposite. Everything we thinks the exact opposite. Everything that happened is by him propaganda. He didn't say as much, but basically October 7th, most of it is exaggerated and propaganda. In
other words, you spoke with the enemy, but go ahead.
Yes. I spoke with the enemy, and I'm not saying I'm proud of it. I'm just, maybe it's one of my mischievous sins. Who knows? But point being is, he listened, and I don't know. I mean, I told him. I mean, trust me, I didn't mince any words either. I let him know exactly what I think, and I said to him, there's nothing to talk about. You're convinced of a false reality, and that's that. I mean, I said, what's your game plan exactly? But I just wanted to share it. That's it. I have nothing to say. I did not convince him. He definitely did not convince me. That I can tell you, and it doesn't change or faze me in any way. But I just found it. What should I say? I don't know.
I have a question. Did he answer your question? What do you think Avraham Avinu, Abraham, or Ibrahim, our father, would say watching his children behave like this? And do you think he would sanction the way you're? Yeah.
He answered. He says the Jews are the ones that are perpetrating crimes, and the Muslims just want peace.
So
that's what he told me.
The babies that were cut out of the mother's wombs and the heads.
He says that's propaganda has been debunked.
What did he say about the charter, the Hamas charter that says it wants the complete?
He says they don't even have a constitution.
Oh, really? Oh, well,
it's not worth repeating what he said. What he said, nothing to talk about. He said not rational, intelligent guy, but completely brainwashed. I said to him, you know what? I feel bad for you. From your childhood, he did speak respectfully to me. Did not yell at me. Did not curse. He didn't even call names or anything. It was very very just matter of fact. I said to him, is it possible you're an intelligent guy that they just brainwashed you from young age, and they just told you, like the Nazis told the Germans, that Jews are cockroaches, that Jews are rodents, that Jews are animals, and that's that, and that's what you learned in the Quran. And he says to me, I'm not religious, I'm agnostic, he told me. But I'm culturally Muslim. I'm culturally. So I said, yeah, but you know what? The fact that your facts are all wrong. You want to live in a bubble in your own echo chamber of your own reality. You can do that, but you're talking to the wrong guy here. I'm not sure why you called me. I asked him, "What do you call me for?" She says, "I respect you. I listen to you." I don't know. It was bizarre as it gets. What should I tell you? I was not. Don't get me wrong. I was not naive in thinking I'm going to change his mind, and I was not naive in thinking that you could talk to the murderers. Whether he himself is one and capable. Based on what he said, probably. I was also suspicious. For all I know, who is he? Maybe he works for them, and he's feeling out. He got a guy's number, me. I speak, And maybe he's targeting me, for all I know,
You know, you're still recording
forbid,
now.
God forbid. But maybe
I know, it's fine. I know I'm
planted a
recording.
seed.
Well, we haven't said anything wrong here, but it's just actually maybe we're
I'm
doing
just
someone
sharing
a
with you.
service.
It was as surreal as it gets. I couldn't even understand
Wow.
what.
Maybe he was trying to have his cake and eat it because he likes the spirituality you have talked about, but when you get into politics, he couldn't take it. So he was hoping he could somehow believe that this rabbi, who he really holds by, could see his way of seeing things. Maybe that's why he called you.
Maybe, and maybe maybe he did hear something. I kept saying to him, "Is it possible you have the wrong story?" People sometimes get the wrong story, and it's just so embedded in you, you can't even see it other ways. He didn't say to me, by the way, maybe you have the wrong story. It wasn't like he didn't keep on tit for tat type of thing. It was just.
And he denied it. He said, "No, my information is 100% accurate. You're that's how he felt."
More or less. And he kept thanking me. He said to me, "Thank you for taking my call. Thank you for talking to me." He was extremely respectful and civil, as much as repulsive it was. He did speak in that tone.
Well, I give him credit for that. It's fascinating.
I don't know. I mean, what it did show to me, something like what Hannah Arendt wrote after World War II, after the Holocaust, the banality of evil. It's so regular. It was even worse than Schilling, because he was like a regular guy. He wasn't foaming at his mouth and he's angry. You took away my land. You took away my people. He was just his own narrative. Its own narrative. It says, and let's say you kill every Gazan, 2.5 million of them. He says the anger of the Muslim world will just be a new Hamas will rise. I said, so what's your answer to that? Yeah, it's true. So I said, but so what do we do? So we allow them to do this because there'll be new ones.
How does he reconcile Hamas using their own people to hide behind? He doesn't. He thinks that's also propaganda.
More or less, he does. He's not capable of hearing another narrative. It's exaggerated. He starts telling me, basically, Israel are Nazis, like these Jews are saying. Some of these professors, and they're the innocent ones, and that's the story, and that's it. Nothing changes.
Wow, that's pretty mind blowing.
I wasn't even upset at it. I just confirmed, for me, it confirmed firsthand what you're dealing with. And I could say there are millions like him. I'm sure of that. He's not an exception. I'm not saying they're all ready to go do what their brothers did, to the Jews, but they're. And he kept telling me he's not. I said, let's talk about Muhammad and this and that. What should I tell you?
It's interesting. I heard somewhere, think about how many prayers and songs we have in Yiddishkeit and in Yiddish culture about peace. And he says, so show me one song or one prayer that the Muslims say about, it was on Israeli news. They were saying, show me one song or one prayer where they pray about peace. Yeah, they say salam alaikum, but that's coming from our shalom aleichem. So it shows you a whole mentality toward these issues. Their mind, whatever.
Yeah,
their brain.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording because what I want to say now, I don't want another recording. But 1 second, let me just. So we're stopping here at the end of the bottom of page 38c, end of the paragraph before Torah Ohr.